All right, guys. This is a video for people who are struggling a little bit with their calculation parts for autosomal recessive pathology. I was thinking of doing one for X linked recessive pathology as well as autosomal dominant. I have a lisp. Get over it. And I'm thinking of going through a little bit of some of the calculations that was up on eStudies and going through some main rules that you should think about when doing these types of calculations. All right. This is for everyone who needs it. Okay. Great. Let's start. All right. Also, this is for colloquium 1. If you don't already know, colloquium 1. Perfect. Let's start. Rules. Number 1. When it comes to autosomal recessive specifically, not XR, okay? We don't use a Bayesian table. We don't use, you remember a Bayesian table looked kind of like this, and then we had the PP, CP, etc., etc. We use it for the XR pathology, and we use it for AD. XR stands for X-linked recessive, while AD stands for autosomal dominant, right? We don't use Bayesian table for autosomal recessive. So as soon as you see something that's about AR, you know immediately that there's no Bayesian table needed. So you're not going to start using a Bayesian table for this person or this person. Punnett squares are enough, okay? Next part. If both parents are healthy and a child is sick, then the parents are both 100% heterogeneous, okay? So both of these parents right here are 100% heterogeneous. Why? Because in order for this person to be sick, this person right here, they need to have this type of phenotype, right? And that means that one of these has to come from the father and another one has to come from the mother. This child cannot have this phenotype unless the parents have one of these or this type of allele. And these parents are also healthy, meaning that in order for them to be healthy, they also have to have a dominant phenotype. They have to have this big A, right? But in order for their child to be sick, they also have to be carrying this recessive allele as well in order to give it to their child, right? So that's kind of how this works. Yeah, so if you see a child that's sick and the parents are healthy, then both parents are absolutely heterogeneous. The same thing if one parent is sick. Let's say this parent is sick. Oh, this parent is sick and this child is sick. You might assume, okay, then we don't know for sure if she is heterogeneous. But actually, she is heterogeneous 100%. Why? Well, because this kid can't get both alleles from this father. They have to have gotten one of them from the dad and the other from the mom. And since this mom is also healthy, she has to have a dominant phenotype or a dominant allele. So she's 100% heterogeneous there as well. That's sort of how that works. So as soon as you see here autosomal recessive and you see one kid that's effective and the other and the parents are healthy, then you know for sure that the parents are 100% heterogeneous. All right, next rule. If nothing in question refers to population frequency, then the population individuals are 100% healthy or have this type of phenotype, all right? So, for example, this woman, if we say there's a kid between these two, and they're asking about how the possibility or the probability that this kid is affected, then we take the parent's probability. So let's see, the parent's probability is 1/2 times the other parent's probability, etc. But if this parent is from the population, like this parent doesn't have a tree, right? Just like this parent, then we have to make sure that there's nothing in the question that refers to population frequency. If there's nothing in the question, then we can just assume that this person is 100% healthy or has this phenotype: dominant, homogeneous, healthy. All right? However, in rule 4, if the question does refer to population frequency, then we want to know what 2PQ is. Always 2PQ. We're not interested in P2, well, we are, but we want to get 2PQ out of all the calculations we're doing, all right? And the factors are as following. 2PQ represents the heterogeneous population frequency, or the amount of people in the population. Say we have a population of 3 people, right? And 1 out of 3 is heterogeneous. Then our 2PQ equals to 1 out of 3. So 1 out of 3 is heterogeneous. That's kind of how that works. Our P, let me delete this. Our P by the power of 2 is our homogeneous healthy population frequency, which is this phenotype. And that means that, say we have a P by the power of 2 equals 2 out of 3, then this person and this person are healthy. The same thing with sick population. If we say Q by the power of 2 is 1/3, then this person is sick or affected. All right, then P represents healthy allele frequency, okay, for the dominant A, while Q represents sick allele frequency, or the small a. That's why when you take 2PQ, you might say, oh, well, isn't it enough to just take PQ? Well, no, because in a Punnett square, the heterogeneous phenotype appears twice. That's why you take 2PQ. Okay, the only thing you need to remember is 2PQ. Usually in the question they say something like 1 out of 1,000 people are affected, right? That means you already have a value for this. That's why you take the square root of 1 out of 1,000, you get 1 out of 100. Oh, wait, 1 out of... Okay, let's do this. That's easier. I think that's right? Okay, let's say this is right. If I'm mathematically wrong, just ignore it, all right? I'm just here to explain, not to be right. So let's say this is then Q. These two will always be equal to 1, okay? So you can take, so that means that P plus Q equals 1, which in this case would be 1 minus Q, which we know is this one because, pointing that way, equals P. This usually is very, very close to 1 anyways. Wow, pages are smaller. So that would be 99 over 100, right? 1 minus 1 out of 100 is equals to 99 over 100, which we can say is approximately 1, all right? And then we take 2PQ, so that's 2 times P times Q equals, and we know that P is approximately 1. It's almost always approximately 1. I haven't seen any question that I haven't rounded up P to 1. So I wouldn't say just assume that P is always 1, but like if you're in a jam and you just want to do something quick and you don't have time, just assume that P is 1. So 1 times Q, which is 1 out of 100, right? We calculated that here, equals to, oh yeah, and times 2. Whoops, times 2. That's 2 in 100, which also can be simplified to 1 out of 50, right? That's sort of how you do the calculations for 2PQ in an easier way to explain it. All right, that's rule number 4. Rule number 5. If parents are healthy and there is an affected sibling, the chance for healthy siblings to be heterozygotes or carriers, or AA, is 2 out of 3. Okay? The chance for all of these siblings to have this phenotype is 2 out of 3. Why is that? Okay? If you look at this pedigree tree, that's the name. You remember, okay, we see an affected kid right here, and we see 2 healthy parents. 1, 2. What do we remember from the previous rules? If we look at rule 2, if 1 kid is affected and both parents are healthy, this is for autosomal recessive only, right? Then the mother has to be 100% heterozygous, and the father has to be 100% heterozygous. Why? Because they both have to give 1 recessive allele each to the child, and they can't be more than heterozygous, like they can't be can't have a double recessive allele because they're healthy, they're white. So they have to have 1 dominant and 1 recessive, just like that, okay? That's why when we go down to here, we can see, okay, this child is 100% sick because they're, affected, they're colored in. So, and the parents being healthy, that means the parents also have to be 100%. Wow, I can write in 100. Great job, Nadia. There we go. 100% heterozygous. The 1 allele from the father, 1 allele from the mother. Okay, that's sort of how this works. So why are the children, these kids, why do they have 2 out of 3 chances of being heterozygous? Shouldn't they have 1/2 chance of being heterozygous? So let's write a Punnett square for this. So we have, I'm not the best, don't have the best handwriting style, so don't flame me, thank you very much. Okay, so let's say this represents the mother, and this represents the father. Okay, we know for sure they have this phenotype because first of all they have a sick child, second of all they are healthy, so they have to have the dominant allele as well. So the first option would be dominant, second option would be hetero, third option would be hetero, and last and final option would be the affected, right? What do we know about these 3 siblings? Can we say something about them? Well, of course we can, because they're not colored in. So we know for damn sure they can't be affected. They can't be this option because they're not sick. If they were this option, they would be colored in, just like this. So now, instead of having 4 options, we now have 3 options. 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. So the denominator would be 3, right? Ooh, sorry, my cat just sneezed. Okay, where was I? Yes, the denominator would be 3 because we have 1, 2, and 3 options. Okay. now we look at the possibilities for these kids to have a heterogeneous allele. Okay, that's what we're all interested in. We're not interested in them being dominant because that would just not be something of interest. We're just interested in how this little recessive allele travels from generation to generation and if it would affect a child later on, right? So the possibilities that these kids or these siblings has a heterogeneous phenotype would be this one and this one. It would be 1 and 2 out of 1, 2, 3. Just like that. So that's why when you see these siblings that are not affected, they have parents that are also healthy, but they have one sibling that is affected. These siblings will all automatically be 2/3 heterogeneous. So this is very important. A lot of people just assume the 50% degree rule that will come up later. This is very important for recessive alleles, okay? Great. No, it's so ugly, but let's continue on. Next question. I think this is the last one. Yeah, before we start with calculations and examples. Where there is no other way to find out heterogeneous probability, you take heterogeneous probability of a first degree relative and divide it by 2. I know this sounds a little bit nuts, so let's just explain. Let's take the heterogeneous probability of these from the question from above, right? Because we just did that. We know that this kid is 100% affected because they're colored in. That means the parents have to be heterogeneous because they're healthy, but they have to have one recessive allele each to give to the child. And the siblings being non-affected but having a affected sibling and non-affected parents have to have 2 out of 3 chances of being AA, right? Or heterogeneous. So now, what's the probability for this person to be heterogeneous? Now, there's no other way to calculate this person's probability besides taking 1/2 of a relative. That's the only way to do it in this case. If we had instead taken half here, we say there's 100% probability here, and we just do 1/2 here because that's a first degree relative. Parents are first degrees relatives. Siblings are also first degree relatives. Children are first degree relatives. So here there's a parent and a child, and also here there's a parent and a child, right? And we can assume this, but because we have an affected sibling, the probability is immediately higher. Here, however, there's no other way to see it. There's no other way to find out if the heterogeneous probability besides taking 1/2 of the heterogeneous probability of a first degree relative. Okay, so a first degree relative, that would be this person, so it would be half of this, which is 1/3. Okay, a lot of people make the mistake and write 1/6. All right, you're still gonna, okay, if the question in the colloquium, I asked my professor about this, might be wrong, but this is what I took from it. If you do a simple mistake in maths, you're all right. You're still gonna get the points if it's just a math calculation error. Okay, as long as you explain what you're doing and why you're doing it and it is correct, then you will receive your points. So if you just accidentally do 1/6 here instead of 2/6 or 1/3, that's fine. But let me explain why this is half of this. Okay, imagine you had pizzas. You have 2 pizzas. okay? But you have some friends that are eating your pizzas, and they have eaten they have eaten 1/2 of your pizza, or 1/3. Whoops. So you have 2/3 of your pizza left. Now you're eating half of what you have in front of you. You're gonna eat another 1/3 of your pizza, which is half of what you already have, right? Let's color it in blue. Boop, 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 boop. What's left? Well, that's of course 1/3, right? You take 1/2 of 2/3, then you're left with 1/3. That's just the easier way to explain it. Sorry. All right, those were all the rules. Now I'm thinking that we can actually start with the calculations. I'm just gonna pick up my phone so I have all of them in front of me, so I'm not making a mistake. Okay, starting from this one. Autosomal recessive disorder, we always have to double check that that we're looking at the right type of illness. What is the probability that 4/1 will have the disorder? 4/1 is this person. They're yet to be born, but they have their gender revealed, which is to be a baby girl. Okay? So we're looking at the probability that this person will have the disorder. What does that mean? That means that they will have this phenotype, they will be sick, or they will be affected. All of it is synonymous, okay? So we're looking at the probability of this person being affected or having this disorder or sickness. Okay, so let's look at these two parents of this child. They are in a, I think it's called a consanguineous something, incestuous relationship, right? They are both cousins. I guess that would be 2nd degree or 3rd degree. I'm not really sure. Okay, then, but we're not really that sure what kind of phenotype they have. We're not sure what probability phenotype that what is the probability for them to have this type of phenotype. Remember, both parents have to have at least one recessive allele to give to a child in order for them to be affected or sick. And the only way these two parents can have a type of phenotype that would, give a child a recessive allele, or the only phenotype they could have in that case would be heterogeneous, right? Because they're healthy, they have to have at least one dominant, but in order to give the child a recessive, they also have to have one recessive. So we're looking at the probability that both are heterogeneous carriers, okay? We're not really that sure. It's not 100%, it's not 50%. So let's go one generation above that. Immediately we see some affected people. 2/1 and 2/2. 2/3 is a sibling. So we can immediately write down the phenotype of these affected, right? They are 100% affected, 100% have 2 recessive alleles. What do we know about the parents now? If we go up to look at the rules, if both parents are healthy, which these two are, and child is sick, then the parents are both 100% heterogeneous, okay? So looking at it again, they're both healthy, child is sick, doesn't have to be one, it could be both, then they are 100% heterogeneous. Why is that? Well, because one of these alleles that these kids have, one has to come from the father and the other one has to come from the mother. Why they are heterogeneous and why they're not this is because they are white. They would be this had they been colored in, but because they're not affected or they're not ill, one of their alleles has to be dominant. They are unaffected, but they are carriers. 100% carriers in order to give one each to their kid. That's sort of how it works. That's why you have to remember these rules, kids. All right. So we know that about these parents. What do we know about this sister, the third sister that's luckily unaffected? What is her probability to be a carrier, to be able to give a recessive allele back to this person, right? So this sister is part of one of the rules again. So let's scroll up. If parents are healthy and there is an affected sibling, the chance for healthy sibling to be heterozygotes or carriers is 2 out of 3. Why? Just please look at my explanation why, okay? So the chance for her to be a have a heterozygote phenotype will be 2 out of 3. Why? Because she has healthy parents and an affected sibling, or 2. Doesn't really have to be 1. It's enough to just have 1 though. So she has a 2 out of 3 chance to be heterozygous carrier, or a recessive allele carrier. Perfect. I speak perfect English, guys. So now we know this whole generation's sort of allele probability. Okay, now for this generation is important. Yeah, so what is the probability for example, this person to have this type of phenotype, right? We know that the mother is a recessive allele carrier. So let's draw a Punnett square here for this person specifically. Okay, let's do it like this. Blump, 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 blump. Now remember one of my rules. You may ask yourself, well, we don't really know who the father of this person is. It's kind of just in the background. Who is the father? We don't know. He's unimportant. Why? Because we don't have any population thing in this question. And remember from one of the rules I had, if nothing in question refers to population frequency, then population individuals are 100% healthy or AA. Remember that. So in the Punnett square, representing the distant father here, we would just write A. But for the mother, we know her phenotype because she is affected, so we would write a double recessive. So the probability for this kid to be homozygote or heterozygote, would be, if we write it down, do you get what I mean right now? The probability for this kid to be heterozygote is 100%, because there's no other possible way for this kid to be healthy and have an affected parent and not be heterogeneous. It's the same principle as these parents right here. These parents have to have given at least one recessive allele each to this kid, but since they are all healthy and not colored, they also have to have a dominant. This kid will 100% receive an affected allele from the parent, either this one or this one, at least one, right? Or, well, yeah, one of them. But since this kid is unaffected, it's not colored, they will also have the dominant allele. Therefore, it would be 100% heterozygous, which we also can see in this Punnett square. So that we, of course, assume that the parent is the father is this. We get 100% heterozygous. Okay. Now we go to the mother of the child instead. Should I have erased that? I don't know. Let's keep that for now. We go to her. Change the color. We know that her mother has a 2 out of 3 chance of being heterozygous. Why? Well, that's because one of her siblings are affected and both her parents are not affected. So she will have 2 out of 3 chances. That's just one of the rules. So judging from that, we only have that as our information. That's the only type of information we have left. What will the daughter have? Okay, we go back to one of our rules. Here we have this one. Where there is no other way to find out heterogeneous probability, you take heterogeneous probability of a first degree relative and divide by 2. Okay, we look at this mother right here to this unborn child. We can't really figure out if she's heterogeneous because we don't really have an affected sibling. We don't really or that's not a sibling. Excuse me. We don't really have an affected sibling over here, or some parent that could tell us. We really don't have anything here. So we take half of a first degree relative's whatchamacallit, heterogeneous probability. Okay, it would be the same if she had a sibling here that was 2 out of 3, or let me write it here. Let's say she has a sibling here, a brother who has 2 out of 3 probability to be heterogeneous. Then if we don't know anything else, then we would also assume that she has half of that here. All right? So this woman would have half of a first degree relative that could either be a mother, that could be a brother, that could be a sister. I don't know if that could be a child. I'm assuming maybe yes. So her first degree relative's heterogeneous probability divided by 2. And remember what I said about pizzas. If you have 2/3 of a pizza and you eat half of that, or 1/3, you would be left with 1/3. Okay, 2/3 divided by 2 equals 1/3. Not 1/6, 1/3. So this woman would have 1/3 probability to be heterogeneous or a allele carrier. Finally, we get to the sun. Yeah. Okay, now we get to the fun part, actually calculating for, or not the son, the daughter's probability to be affected. Okay, not to be a heterogeneous carrier, but to be affected. What we do here, we take parent 1 probability to be AA times parent 2's probability to be AA times probability Punnett square, Punnett to be sick. Those are the probabilities we're doing when it comes to finding out if the kid is going to be affected or not. I think this is the same for any sort of disease, whether it's autosomal dominant, autosomal recessive, or X-linked recessive. It's all the same, except that maybe you add penetrance for autosomal dominant. Okay, so parent 1's probability to be heterogeneous right here is 100. 100 we can write as 1 times parent's 2 probability to be heterogeneous, which is right here, and her probability is 1/3, times probability Punnett square to be sick, for this child to be sick if both parents are heterogeneous. Okay, if both parents are heterogeneous, remember. So let's draw a Punnett square right here. So both parents are heterogeneous. So the probability for this child to be sick, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 options. We don't know if this child is affected or not, so we can't just take away an option like we did with the sibling right here. Instead, we assume all options are available. Then there's 1 out of 4 chances for this kid to be sick. Why? Because they need to have both recessive alleles to be sick. So we times this by 1/4. And what do we get? We don't need calculators for this one. 1 out of 12. And that's the answer to this one. Now carrying on to the next question. Well, I'm just going to let people pause here if they need a little bit of pause. I know it's messy, but hopefully listening would also help somehow. I don't know. Carrying on to the next question. Autosomal recessive disorder which manifests in early childhood. What is the probability that 4/1 will have the disorder? 4/1 is right here. And we know the gender, but the child hasn't been born yet. We write it like this, question mark. All right. Then we look at the parents again. The parents' probability, because of course we have to take the parent's 1 probability to be heterogeneous carrier times parent 2 probability to be heterogeneous carrier times probability of Punnett square to be sick, which for autosomal recessive is always 1/4. That we can just see it from here. That's just for autosomal recessive, guys, okay? Don't mix it up with other ones. So that's always why it's always important to be drawing a Punnett square so that you remember. Checking this father. We don't know the probability for this father to be heterogeneous carrier. So let's just write AA. My cat is climbing walls and scaring me that he's gonna jump. Thankfully he didn't jump. Same thing with this mother. We don't really know what her deal is right now. We check instead these parents, and we still don't know because they don't really have an affected that's close to them, so we're unaware. Same with these parents, we're not really aware. But then we come to this person right here. This person has a child that is affected. And if we remember, I will kill my cat. Give me a second, I'm just going to close the windows. 1 second. Okay, sorry. All right, where was I? Yes. Yes, we're looking at this parent. This parent has an affected kid. So if we remember one of the rules, I think it was rule 2. If both parents are healthy and child is sick, then the parents are both 100% heterogeneous. Okay? This and this. So why don't we assume that the dad is sick? Let me just draw it like this. Boop, 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 boop. La, 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 la. Why don't we assume that the dad is sick? Couldn't he just have made this child sick, right? If he had two? Well, no. Why not? Because this child has double recessive genes. One of them came from the dad, of course, and the other came from the mother, right here. And if the mom is healthy and non-colored, then she has to have a dominant allele as well. So that's why the dad here is absolutely irrelevant. We're just looking at the mom right now. She is the most important one, and we know that 100% for sure she has a recessive allele because she must have given it to her daughter as well. So if we look at question two again, or rule 2 again, both parents don't have to be healthy. It's enough for just one parent to be healthy for us to know for sure that they are 100% heterogeneous. This person can have been affected like this, but even then, one of these alleles have to have come from the healthy parent as well. Let me just delete that. All right, so now we know for sure that this mom must have had a recessive allele to give to this child. Now what? What are we going to do with the rest of these people? Well, just to make sure I'm checking my previous explanation. Remember the other rule, the last rule, where there is no other way to find out heterogeneous probability. You take heterogeneous probability of a first degree relative and divide by 2 or by half. Okay, so looking at this, there's no other way for us to calculate the heterogeneous probability of these people. They don't really have any affected relatives except for this one, of course. And we know that she is for sure 100%. Then we take first degree relatives. All of these people, all of them are first degree relatives to her. Remember, first degree relatives are mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, but also children. Although in this case, we know for sure that this person is affected. And we divided by half of that relative's probability. So if the relative has 100% heterogeneous probability, then half of that equals to 50%, or 1 out of 2. So all of these people have a 1 out of 2 chance to be heterogeneous, to have heterogeneous phenotypes. The same principle goes to these two people, since they are related. They are related to this person and this person individually. This would be half of these first degreers, right? First degree relatives. So half of 50%. 50% divided by 2 equals 25, which is 1 out of 4, because she is first degree relative with him and he is first degree relative with her, and they have 1/2 a chance to be heterozygous. Then these have half of 1/2, which is 1/4. Finally, we can do the final calculation. We take first parent's probability to be heterozygous times other parent's probability to be heterozygous times probability for child to be affected. So we draw a Punnett square again, but for you smart people out there, you will know that it's 1/4 because we're looking at the autosomal recessive, which is always 1/4. There we go. And you can see here, it's 1 out of 4 for them to have this phenotype, which is the only phenotype you need in order to be a affected or sick person. So we write it down here, 1/2. And this will equal to 1 out of 64. And that's the end of this question. Now the answers will become a little bit, or the questions will become a little bit more difficult. I'm not sure if it's going to be that difficult in this one though. We'll see. Oh, there's an answer there immediately. Okay, ignore this. I can't delete this. Just ignore it, all right? Let's start with this question. Autosomal recessive disorder. So we immediately know that we're working with the right disease. What is the probability that 4/1 will have disorder? I'm just going to make sure that it's not the same question as this. No, okay. 4/1. This is 4. This is 1. We know it's a guy. Congratulations. Not born. We'll see what the chance for this child to be sick is. Okay. Looking at the parents here. Do we know if they're 100% heterogeneous or not? No, we don't. So we're searching for it. We're not really sure. Their parents, do we know if they are heterogeneous or not? If your answer is no, we don't know, then think a little bit more. Think a little bit further. These are siblings. These two are siblings. All right. So they have these people as parents. Though this is their mom and this is their dad. Why that's important is that the dad is affected right here. So if the dad is affected, the possibility for them or the dad to have given one recessive allele to these kids is 100%. These kids will 100% out of the time have one recessive allele. And why they don't have the other recessive allele, why we know that it's heterogeneous immediately, is because they're healthy. They're not sick. So they have to have this allele. But because their father is sick, they also have to have this allele. So this is 100% their phenotype. All right? That's why it's important to not just immediately jump into conclusions and say, yeah, you don't know about this phenotype. We know that the parents are 100% affected. Then we know that pretty much everybody around them, almost first degree relative, has to be at least 100%, at least a carrier, right? Okay, are we interested in knowing about this mother? Not really, because we immediately know the phenotypes of these. Considering they're healthy, that means they have to have one dominant allele, and the recessive allele comes from the dad, because he has to give at least one of these to the kids, right? He doesn't have any other options besides the recessive alleles. So now we go back to these little buggers. What is the chance for these people to be heterogeneous carriers? Is there any other way for us to calculate these? Is there another relative that is affected? No. So that's why we go according to rule number 6. No other way to find out. So then we take first degree relative heterogeneous probability and divide it by 2. So we take this divided by 2 for this person and this divided by 2 for this person, which will be 50% or 1 out of 2. Same thing here, 1 out of 2. So we know the first parent's probability, the father's probability to be heterogeneous is 1/2, times the mother's probability to be heterogeneous, which is 1/2. We write a Punnett square for the probability for this kid to be affected, which would be, look like this. So it's 1 out of 4 times 1 out of 4. And that is equal to 1 out of 16. That's how you calculate this one. So fairly easy. Next question. We're going to get to populations below here, but let's start. Why do I have a dominant pathology here? That's weird. Okay, but let's start with, let's finish it these easier parts first. Okay, autosomal recessive, we're on the right track. What is the probability that 4-1 will have the disorder? Let's look at 4-1. It's a girl, and we're asking if the probability for them to have this sort of phenotype. All right, so we'll look at these two parents. Can we calculate for them? No. Parent for this, no. Parent for this, no. Parent for this, no. No. Or kind of yes. So this person's father is this person, right? Do we know this person's phenotype 100%? Yes or no? Yes, we do. We absolutely know that this person is 100% heterogeneous, just as well as this person is 100% heterogeneous. Why is that? Well, this person and this person are A, healthy, so they have to have at least one dominant allele, and B, they have an affected kid. And remember rule number 2? If both parents are healthy and child is sick, then the parents are both 100% heterogeneous. So here we go. For this kid to have one allele from a mom and one allele from a dad, that means one of each for these parents, and they have to have one dominant because they are not affected. So they have to have one dominant because they're healthy and one sick allele because their kid is sick and has that type of phenotype. Okay. As for the rest, because we cannot really calculate, we don't have any other affected here, for these people, it's just the first degree relative rule. So we take 1/2 of this because we know for sure that this one is 100%. This one would be 50% or 1.5 because it's first degree relative to this person. It's the mother. The father is also 1/2 because it's first degree, and the brother is also 1/2 because it's first degree. But the niece, I think it would be, is 1/4 because her first degree relative is this person. This person has 1/2 a chance to be heterozygous. Then she would have 1/2 of that, which is 1/4. Now we look at this person and we can assume, yeah, this person has 1/2 as well because we just take first degree relatives, right? First degree relatives, it's a father here and it's a son here. For some of you people, you might immediately recognize that this is wrong. It's not 1/2. Why? Well, because it has an affected sibling. Remember rule number 5, I think it was? parents are healthy and there is an affected sibling, the chance for healthy sibling to be heterozygotes? Is that how you spell it? I don't think so. Heterozygote carriers is 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 chance. If you're a sibling and you have an affected sibling and both parents are unaffected, then the probability for you to have heterozygous adds up to 2/3 instead of 1/2. So let's go here. Right here. The probability for this person to be heterozygous is now 2/3 and not 1/2 because it has an affected sibling and both parents are healthy. Then it would always be 2/3. It wouldn't be the same, however, and do keep this in mind, if one of the parents were affected and had this phenotype instead. Then this wouldn't be true. Okay, then it would be something else, and you can calculate that through a Punnett square. But right now, if both parents are healthy and there's one affected sibling, then the probability for this person to be heterozygous is 2 out of 3. Now we can finally calculate for the kid. We take mom's probability times dad's probability. Just me checking my notes to see that I'm doing everything right. Times Punnett square probability for this kid to be affected. And we've done it so many times by now, but remember, it's easier to do the Punnett square just in case for if you have the time over. But we can see here that it's 1/4. So to cut on time, just write down 1/4. And that is equal to 1 out of 24. And that's that. Now, finally, we come to a little bit more tricky questions. Okay, this is kind of how colloquium questions might look like. I think it just gives me colloquium feelings. I don't know why, because of this fact, because I feel like these are going to be prominent in colloquiums since I'm scared of them, and this makes me scared. Alright, sorry, I'm tired. Phenylketonuria is an autosomal recessive inborn error of metabolism which is caused by mutations in the PAH gene. PAH gene is encoding for enzymes, phenylalanine hydroxylase. Disease usually is diagnosed within newborn screening programs. Incidence of phenylketonuria in European descent population is 1 out of 10,000 newborns. Based on given family pedigree, estimate probability to have an affected child in marriage between 3.2 and 3.3. What do we know? First of all, we know that we're looking at phenylketonuria, and it is an autosomal recessive. Remember that every time you're not going to immediately know if it's autosomal recessive, X-linked recessive, autosomal dominant. You always have to read that from the question so that you know that you're following the right rules, because the rules are going to be different depending on which type of illness you're dealing with. Okay, so it's important that you know for sure that you're on the right track. Okay, so for autosomal recessive, let me just write it down. We have a 1 out of 10,000 newborns, which is the incidence of phenylketonuria. That means that Q by the power of 2 equals 1 in 10,000. Why is it Q by the power of 2? Well, if we look here, Q by the power of 2 is homozygous sick population frequency. And we know that incidence rate is synonymous with this right here. That's why we know immediately that it's q by the power of 2. Oftentimes, when you see this specifically for AR, don't think XR. XR is completely different, but for AR, then oftentimes if you see something in the question, they're usually talking about the homozygous sick population frequency, unless they state specifically that this is the heterozygous frequency, population frequency, or the homozygous healthy population frequency. It all depends. Be careful to read the question, be able to know what goes where. But for this incidence of phenylketonuria, they're talking about the sickness population, which is q by the power of 2. Immediately here, we can calculate the population frequency for hetero or AA, right? Did I write heterogeneous before? Sorry. Okay, anyways, and that is 2 times q times p, or 2pq. Now I kind of reversed it, but it doesn't matter because it's multiplications. We can calculate this easily. You can see it, or maybe I didn't write it above. Nope, I didn't, because I'm an idiot. But if you just think simply, q plus p equals 1. So let's take q, and that's this value, the square root of that value, 10,000, which is equal to 1 out of 100. Okay, now this this equals q, right? Now we can get p here by taking 1 minus q, which is equal to 1 minus 1 out of 100. Let me do p equals, which is equal to 99 out of 100. I feel like I'm going too quick here. So we know that q by the power of 2 is 1 out of 10,000. So we now want to know just simply q without the power of 2. So take q and we take the square root. You're with me here so far? That's 1 out of 100. Okay? Now we want to know what p is, because we want to do this to qp. We already know what q is. We want to know what p is. We can calculate it by taking by this sort of what's called this rule that q plus p is equal to 1. So we can just take 1 minus q and get p, right? So that's what we did here. P equals 1 minus q, which is equal to 1 minus 1 out of 100, which is equal to 99 out of 100. A lot of people do the mistake here. Remember that 1 is, in this case, equal to 100 over 100. And 100 over 100 minus 1 out of 100 is, of course, 99 out of 100. Don't make a simple math mistake here. But if you do, I'm pretty sure the professor is going to give you full points for it anyways, because it's a simple error. It's not like you don't know what you're doing. So we got our p here, and we got our q here, right? Now we do 2qp. Remember that if the p is very, very, very close to 1, we can just remake it and write a 1 instead, because 99 out of 100 is pretty much the same as 1. So 2 times q, which is 1 out of 100, times 1, which is p, equals to 2 out of 100. Because if you have, now remember, this is fractions. I always make this mistake. if you have 1 out of 100, say you have one little rock, one little cool black rock out of 100 white rocks, and now you get another black rock because it's double the amount, so 2 black rocks out of 100 white rocks, then you will have 2 out of 100. That's sort of how it works. And that's your population frequency for hetero AA. Why is this important? We'll get to it later. But as soon as you see population frequency, you do this, okay? Now, let's go to this first question. What is the possibility for 3-2 and 3-3 to have an affected child in a marriage? Okay, so let's look at 3-2 and 3-3. That's this couple right here, and they're expecting, right? So we're asking, what is the probability for this child to be affected? Affected is synonymous with sick, also synonymous with ill. All right, what is the probability for these parents to have this sick, or to have a sick child? Now remember, we're starting from them. Can we calculate their heterogeneous probability? Nope. Let's go to the parents. Can we calculate their heterogeneous probability? Nope. And we continue and we continue until we come to someone who is directly related to a sick person. So this is the only sick person we have here. It's better to start here, actually. So we know for damn sure that this person is 100% a homogeneous recessive phenotype. Okay? And what do we know, repeating again, what do we know about, with autosomal recessive disorders, about people who have children that are affected while the parents are not affected? That's rule 2, people. And that is that the parents are always 100% heterogeneous. Parents are always 100% heterogeneous, okay? Because they all have to have one recessive allele each, and since they're healthy, they also have to have a dominant allele. And if you're cool like me, you also write the probability of these siblings, and we know that siblings of unhealthy other siblings have a 2 out of 3 chance as long as the parents are also healthy. If the parents are unhealthy, then the chance is bigger for them to be heterogeneous. I don't know why I did that. That's really not that important, but I just do it for people to understand a little bit better. Okay, what now? You may ask. Good thing. Now we really don't have anybody else to go. We already have calculated or figured out the 100% possibilities, or 2/3 possibilities in the siblings cases. Then we do rule number 6, I think. Yeah. Where there is no other way to find out heterogeneous probability, you take heterogeneous probability of a first degree relative and divide it by 2 or divide it by half. So if these people are 100% heterogeneous because they have an affected child and it's autosomal recessive, then these people have 1 out of 2 chance to get it because they're first degree relatives. Same with this person's relatives. It's also 1 out of 2, but they're less important. But actually, let's write it down. You know what? Let's write it down. Because these, we have more questions. I forgot that we have more questions. Maybe I shouldn't have spoiled that much. But, okay. So going to this, because right now we're interested in these 2 people, right? So going to these people, they are first degree relatives with these people. So they would be 1/2 of 1/2, which is 1/4. These 3 people are first degree relatives with these people, and they would also be 1/2. Oh, well, she's not related to them at all. So these would be 1/8 and 1/8. Now, this person is related to this person, which means that that's also 1/2 of an eighth, which is 1/16. What about this person? What about him? Well, we don't see a pedigree tree. We don't see anybody else related to this person. So what do we do with this person right here? Let's look at the rules. Number 1. If nothing in question refers to population frequency, the population individuals are 100% healthy. So these people that don't have pedigrees, that's a population individual, would be 100% healthy. If question refers to if nothing in question refers to population frequency. However, this question does refer to population frequency. It's 1 out of 10,000 newborns. That's what we calculated right here. So what would it be instead? It would be 2 PQ. This person would have 2 PQ chance if question does refer to population frequency. So we take 2 PQ that we calculated here, which is 2 out of 100. This can also be, of course, shortened to 1/50th. So it would be 1. Let me just double check that I'm doing right. Yeah, 1/50th chance for this person to be heterogeneous, because this person comes from population. And the population frequency for heterogeneous individuals is 1 out of 50 people. Scary stuff. Now we're finally done with finding out the possibility for the parents to be heterogeneous. Now we do the whole calculation for the child. We take one parent's probability, so the mother's, times the father's probability to be heterogeneous, times the probability for the child to be affected. So let's draw a Punnett square for people to understand again. It's of course a fourth, but sometimes it's easier to draw a Punnett square just because you often forget when you're learning about autosomal dominant, when you're learning about X-linked recessive, you very often forget why it's 1/4. So it's a lot easier for you to draw it if you find the time. Also, this is wrong. Why didn't you guys tell me anything? A. So right here, this is 1/4. Therefore, it would be 1/4, which is equal to, I'm cheating right now, I'm looking at my notes, 1 out of 3200. That's for question A. Isn't this fun? 1 out of 3200. Now let's look at the next couple here. It's 3, 4, and 3, 5. So the couple next to the ones we just worked with, which is this. And look at here. We already calculated it, kind of. I thought it was so irrelevant, but it is. Remember again, this person is affected. These parents are unaffected, but they're 100% heterogeneous because they have an affected child. Then all of these 3 siblings are 2/3 heterogeneous. That's their possibility. Why? Please look at the rules please look at rule number, I think it's rule number 5 when I went through. So we already know, ignore this one. This one's not a sibling. Whoa, that was scary. Jump scare. This one's not a sibling. This one is a population person because he is not related to any pedigree person. He's just the husband of this beautiful lady right here. He's just Ken. He's just the background character So it would be the population frequency for heterogeneous, which we of course calculated already here. That's 1 out of 50 right there, because it's 2pq for both of these guys, because they're both from population. Why? Because they don't have a tree that explains their heritage. They kind of, let's just call them orphans for the sake of argument. All right, so now we calculate, and I'm just checking that I'm doing this correctly as well. Yeah, now we calculate the probability for this kid to be affected. This kid is already born, so they're talking about a new child. They're not talking about this child. How do we know? Because this child is already born. We already know they are a square. They're an unaffected boy, so they're a square. They're fully happy and healthy. They're asking for a new child, because as soon as they're asking about affected child, then we can't have a living child that's not colored, right? We have to have this sort of diamond shape, because that means that we don't know about, it hasn't been born yet, so we don't know about any illnesses. In this case, we do know about the illnesses, and that is that this person does not have any illnesses because they're not colored, because they're already born. They're already a full healthy guy. But right now we're looking at this child's probability to be affected, and that's of course the father's probability to be heterogeneous times the mother's probability to be heterogeneous times the probability for this child to have this type of phenotype from the Punnett square, which is 1/4. That's what we already did right here. And that is equal to 1 out of 300, I think. Yeah. Really? Why does it feel wrong? 50 times 3 is 150 times 4 is 450. 2 out of 450. Yeah, that seems wrong. 1 out of 300. Well, yeah, that seems wrong. I'm actually going to calculate this. Sorry. Let me just grab a calculator. 50 times 3 times 4. Oh! See, quick maths when it's late is not good for me. 1 out of 300. It's completely correct. So 1 out of 300. Okay. Next question. What is the probability to have an affected child in a marriage between 3/8 and 3/9? So let's look at it right here. 3/8 and 3/9 is this couple, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This couple right here. Okay, and they seem pretty far off. First of all, let's immediately grab the population person. Who of these people are from population? Who of these people are not connected to the pedigree tree? That is, of course, this woman right here. She is an outsider. So now we want to know this father's probability to be heterogeneous as well. So we look at his pedigree tree. We can't really figure out anything here, but we can figure out from here by knowing about these people, right? Because we take the first degree relatives probability and we divide it by half if we have no other options. Remember, if we have no other options, make sure you have no other options for this person. to calculate their probability to be heterogeneous. This person is irrelevant. And now we'll look at this person's probability to be heterogeneous, and that's of course heterogeneous. I did it again, heterozygous. And that's of course 1/2 of their other first relative, which is their mother in this case. That would be 1/4. And that, ladies and gents, means that for number C, it would be father's probability times mother's probability times Punnet's square probability to be affected, which is, oh, don't fail people right now. 1 out of 800? Oh, yeah, I think so. Let me calculate it to make sure so that I'm not fooling anybody, because I don't have the answer. Times, yeah, 1 out of 800. Doop, 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 doop. There we go. And that's how you do this type of calculation. Now let's do the final two. This one we're going to draw a big X over because this is autosomal dominant. That's not something we're going to go through today. Autosomal recessive, remember this is in Latvian, so we're starting from here to read. Early onset AR pathology with incidence of 1 per 81,000 or 8,100 newborns. What is probability that 4/1 will be affected? Let's check. There we go. 4/1. So this is generation 1, this is generation 2, generation 3, and generation 4. So we're looking at this kid. So what is probability for this kid to have this type of phenotype? Because we're looking at autosomal recessive disease. Again, remember, look at what type of disease it is so you're following the right rules. This is specifically just for autosomal recessive. Okay, what do we know about this kid's parents? Right here. Well, we know that one has a pedigree tree, while the other does not. The other is from population. And what do we know about the rules? If we have a person that doesn't have a pedigree tree and is from population, and there's nothing in the question that talks about population frequency rate, then we just assume that this person is healthy. However, in this case, we do have something in the question that talks about population frequency rate. It's 1 out of 8,100 people, newborns. This case, it's frequency of being unhealthy alleles, or Q by the power of 2. Therefore, we can calculate 2PQ in this case, because that's the probability for this person to be heterogeneous. So let's calculate it right here. We know that P plus Q equals 1, and we want to know what 2PQ is, right? So in this case, we want to know what Q is alone. So we take the root out of square root of 1 in 8,100, and we get 1 in 90. Just check in to see that I'm doing it right. Yep, which equals 2Q. That's our Q. Now for P is equal to 1 minus Q. We're just kind of turning these two inside out, which is equal to 1 minus Q, which is 1 out of 90, right? And remember, this is tricky, usually tricky. Remember that this one represents 90-90, okay? Not 100, nothing like that, 90-90. So what is 90 over 90 minus 1 over 90? That is, of course, 89 over 90. And if you remember anything about what I said before, you can always round up your P to 1. I'm pretty sure it's always. So we know what P is, we know what Q is. Now we can calculate 2PQ, which is equal to 2 times P, which is 1, times Q, which is 1 out of 90. And that is, of course, equal to 2 out of 90. Or if we divide it by 2 right here, 1 in 45. Yeah. So this is our 2PQ. 2PQ. So now we know what our 2PQ is. We can write it down. 1 out of 45. So we're done with the mother's probability. Now let's look at the fathers. The fathers, we check the closest sick relative, which is this person. So the closest sick relative is this person. We'll look at the parents. Now remember what I said. Remember rule 2. If in autosomal recessive pathology, if one or at least one child is affected and both parents are healthy, that means that both parents are always 100% heterogeneous. Why? Because because these children have this type of pentosome said, oh my god. Oh wow, I forgot it. Phenotype. So one has to go to one of the phenotypes, the other one has to go to the other. Oh, the other one has to come from the other parents. Wow, let me just start again. One recessive allele has to come from one parent, while the other recessive allele has to come from another parent. And because they're healthy, they also have to have the dominant big A. That's why they're 100% heterogeneous. I need to sleep. 100% heterogeneous right here. And remember what I said, if you cannot figure out anything else, if there's no other way to figure out these people's percentage to be heterogeneous, then you just assume the half rule. So you take half of the first relative. So if these people have 100, their parents will be half, their siblings will be half, because remember, first relative is also siblings and not just parents. Now, the siblings' children will be half of what they have, which is 1 out of 4. And then, oh yeah, that's it. That's it. Perfect. Now we can finally do the calculation. We take father's probability to be heterozygous times mother's probability to be heterozygous times child's probability to be affected. So we draw a Punnett square here for people to remember. Remember to always draw a Punnett square if you are not sure, because it's better. That's of course 1 out of 4 chance to be affected, meaning we have a final answer of 1 out of 720. Last and final one I'm going to go through with you guys. Yeah, here we go. Early onset AR pathology, so we're looking at the right illness. Probability that 3-1 will be affected if it's known that incidence is 1 out of 6,400 in newborns. Okay, remember that we have the incidence rate 1 out of 6,400, so we immediately know that Q by the power of 2 is 1 out of 6,400. So we can immediately calculate 2PQ, but let's wait with that. Or let's actually calculate it. We know that Q plus P equals 1. So let's do Q here, and that's the root of 6,400, which is equal to 80. And then we have this. So we take 1 minus 80, which is equal to P. And that is equal to 79 out of 80. Remember that this 1 represents 80 out of 80. That's why it's 79 and not anything else. Which is approximately 1. Remember, P is almost always approximately 1. So 2PQ equals Q times P times 2, which equals to 2 out of 80, and that can be shortened to 1 in 40. That's just how easy that is. So this mother that doesn't have any pedigree, linkage, tree thing is 1 out of 40% chance to be heterozygous. Now for her husband, right? Let's look at the closest relative. Closest relative is the sibling or this mother, okay? Now you can immediately think, well, this person has this affected sibling, so the probability is probably 2 out of 3. If you assume this, you kind of forget about the rule. So let's look at the rule about 2/3 again. Let's look up, I think it was rule number 5. Yeah. If parents are healthy and there is an affected sibling, the chance for healthy sibling to be heterozygotes or carriers is 2 out of 3. But what are the conditions? The parents have to be healthy and there has to be an affected siblings. Now let's look at the chart again. So for this guy, he does have affected siblings. However, he doesn't have completely healthy parents. Only one of these parents are healthy. Therefore, this probability does not make sense anymore because both parents have to be healthy for it to work. Instead, one of these parents is not healthy. So one of these parents is like this. And if you're already doing some mental gymnastics, you will immediately know for sure that this guy is 100% heterozygous. Why? Because he needs to have gotten at least one recessive allele from his mom. And we don't know what his dad is, but we know that his dad at least has one dominant because they're both healthy. This guy is healthy, so he needs to have had one dominant. And the recessive comes from the mother because that's the only thing he could have gotten from his mom is a recessive. So we know for 100% sure that this guy is heterozygous. Now we can definitely calculate the child's probability to be affected. So let's draw a Punnett square right here. And we know that it's 1 out of 4 chance. So let's write 1 out of 4 times mother's probability to be heterozygous, which we got from the population, times father's probability to be heterozygous, which is 1 because it's 100%. And that is equal to 1 out of 160 chance for this kid to be affected. Now that's all I'm going to cover for autosomal recessive. Remember that to come back to this after you finished autosomal dominant and X-linked recessive, because it's easy to forget. Right in the moment, you think it's easy to remember, but oftentimes you forget about these rules as soon as you start studying about the other laws.